Welcome to Old Man Blerd. Hi, I'm John, and along with my friend Terrence, we make up a pair of lifelong geeks who happen to be black, over 50, but are certainly nerds first and foremost. The Alpha Geek and the Omega Freak. And we welcome everyone. And by everyone, we mean nerds, blerds, and bleaks, cosplayers and role players, geeks and freaks, Marvel zombies and distinguished competitors, Trekkies, Star Warriors, Batmaniacs, and Spider fans, Warhams, Whovians, AFOLs, adult fans of Legos, Tolkienites, Weeaboos, Supernatural hunters and otakus, Ava geeks, bro stars and sis stars, Pokemon trainers, Potterheads, bronies, Whovians, browncoats, and Scoobies, and all nerd properties in between. Because we are over 50, we've seen a thing or two and have experience, long experience, with a lot of these properties. So thank you for listening to Old Man Blerd.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
That's good.
Yay. Guess who's back? Back again.
The threats never end.
Right? Right.
May the fourth be with you.
May the fourth be with you as well. Yeah, this is going to be a catch up with all the nerd stuff. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Old Man Blerd, where two 50-something nerds, soon to be 60-something nerds, reminisce and are remiss about any number of nerd properties. We are recording this on May the 4th. So may the 4th be with you for those of you that are Star Wars fans. Otherwise, it's just May 4th.
I know, but it really makes me upset. I got sent a message from my kids saying May the fourth be with me. I raised them under the wrong faith.
Oh no.
Not
Yeah, because you're
magic,
more
from-
you're
Star
more
Wars.
of a Trek person. That's fine. That's
Yeah.
fair.
I know they followed the wrong faith.
They're both in space. I guess they're both in space. There's both of them have lasers. they both have laser guns. There's also alien races, some of which are friendly, some of which are not. So, but then, there's lightsabers in one and, the Borg in another. So many differences.
Yeah, but I mean also the fact that in Star Trek, you ever see the Danny Glover skit they had a few years ago?
Was it on Saturday Night Live or something?
Yeah.
Huh.
And they had
No.
all the blacks in the Star Wars universe. It was like 4. They had a little
Well,
convention for.
yeah, it's like they had Uhura, they had Geordi. I saw your Geordi made LaForge be with you.
Yep.
Yeah, so not many, what's his name from what's his name from Deep Space Nine? Cisco, played by Avery Brooks, I believe.
Yep.
So,
and Brock Peters played his father and Cedric.
Yeah.
I forgot what his last name was.
I just remember Avery Brooks always going Spencer because he was on Spencer for Hire.
Yes, he was.
That's a long time ago. So yeah, May the 4th. So what has your gosh, I guess it's probably closer to a month. What have a month of your nerddom? What have you been up to, nerd wise?
Let's see. I went on a limb and bought a new phone just because I wanted more memory so I could play the Godzilla Builder game.
So do you have an Apple phone or an Android?
I have an Android.
Ah, see, that's why. Not that Android's bad. No, I have no loyalty towards Apple, but they do seem to have a lot of memory. I guess the Androids do now too. So,
yeah, they do now.
But
they did a cutoff point. They did. Being in geekdom, we know there's no real limit to terabytes that we wouldn't mind having on a phone.
Sure.
And they had a terabyte phone about 4 years ago, and then somewhere along the line, someone decided, well, that's too much, and nobody really needs that. We as geeks all know we hate that. we hate that concept. So what tell is what we don't need.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's fair. And so you got a new phone to play a Godzilla game. And what
Yep.
else?
Saw Sinners.
We'll go into that a
Uh,
little bit later in the show. You went to see
yep.
Sinners. I
Yep.
was thinking that we could talk about Sinners and Thunderbolts, and I guess that's really all that's up, and then the beginning of the con season. Um,
Yes, the
so
season's
you saw
starting.
saw Sinners. We'll go back to that. What else in the
And
world?
I've been playing a Fallout game for about 2 weeks off and on.
Oh, nice. Where are you on the remaster of the Elder Scrolls?
I
Is
want
it
to get a computer for that. I know what you're saying. I want to get a computer for that.
um
Just for
it's
Elder Scrolls.
they remade it, right? Was it Elder Scrolls
Yes.
or Oblivion? They remade Elder Scrolls. And I think the big hullabaloo is because there's a team that was remaking or doing some stuff with Oblivion, and they're worried that the remake of Elder Scrolls, those people are going to interrupt the developers that are making that a bunch of special stuff for Oblivion. I think that's
Well, this harkens back into a conversation I always want to have, but I never going to have it because it's kind of deep.
hmm Sure.
It is. There is a point that IPs, the creators have no rights.
hmm
And the best example is J.K. Rowling and her talking about trans, and not going to get into that, but her belief versus her creation.
Sure.
And
Like,
Elder Scrolls is a good example. Elder Scrolls has the world's record Skyrim for
oh,
the most mod.
that's what it is. Actually, I'm mistaken. It was the remake of Elder Scrolls Oblivion is
Right.
putting a problem with the Skyrim folks because they're worried that
Exactly.
yeah, they're worried that yeah, that. Okay.
And yeah, and so having 70,000 different mods, and they're from kooky to semi-pornographic to more brutal,
Sure.
but it allows you to decide what kind of. I mean, they have one, you know, I'm a Godzilla freak. They have one where you can have Godzilla fighting in the background.
Sure.
Okay, so my point with this is, once a IP reaches a certain level, the creators shouldn't have the sway and voice they have, or well, we're not going to do this, or we should be able to do this, because it has become something beyond them. It's become a community.
hmm
And Skyrim is the epitome of such a thing. Once it had 70,000 mods, we're not going to have that. We're not going to, it went right out the window.
Sure. I think that's why people are very upset with Bethesda. So forgive me. I happen to of all the things, the IPs that I've explored, Bethesda is the most recent for me. I mean, like I explored Fallout when it probably 2 or 3 when it came out. And then I just didn't mess with anything for a long time. And I had Elder Scrolls Morrowind on
Right.
the computer, but for whatever reason, I just missed all of what that company was doing. So I'm new to the outrage. I mean, to the point of being like, wait, Elder Scrolls Oblivion is the problem. They're remastering that, but then Skyrim is what there's another developer team that's been working for a few years to do some crazy thing for that, that they're worried that the Bethesda is going to put the kibosh on it and stop it
That's
or something.
exactly what I was talking about. That's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Because
That's
there
so
should be
I
a
was
point that is
hmm
a passion project. And I think part of it has to do back with, of all things, Star Trek, when they
hmm
had an XR. I think that
hmm
was the name of the fan film.
hmm
And the guy was basically doing the first Romulan Federation battle. And he
hmm
was doing it as a fan film. And that was no big deal.
hmm
But he had put so much money into it that he's like, you know what? I'm going to make money off of this to make my money back.
hmm
And once he did that, that's when they start shutting down the fan films and saying they can only have 8 minutes and you can't have previous actors and different stuff and all that other stuff.
hmm
And to me, that goes in three routes. One, don't stop him from doing it, but claim it as your own. You know,
hmm
in other words, it's like, okay, you know what? We're going to let you do this, but we're not going to lose our money, but we're not going to let you lose money, but we're your partner. Kind of like Dell.
Sure.
When Dell bought out Alienware, they
hmm
let Alienware keep making their product. They just want their 25%, like the mob.
Well, and see, that's, I think, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into this subject, but I do think that to keep that spirit of the Wild West of computers and computer games alive, they're going to have to allow the modding community to do what they want. I mean, sure, you can still, I mean, it is better for you to have a strong modding community doing stuff for Fallout and everything else than to have people so uninterested in your property they barely want to buy your game. I mean, people are still playing Fallout 3 and 4. And I mean, these are fairly old games. You know, people are still playing Elder Scrolls, all the versions. So, don't mess up your intellectual property by just bowing to
Lowering
commerce.
up.
Yeah.
I mean, lowering up, that's the best problem because what they don't understand. I mean, a good example is I always use this example, even though I don't like it because I don't like spiders.
Hmm.
Lie.
Hmm.
But if you go online, you would see it was about 6 years ago.
Hmm.
A guy did a passion project of about a 30-minute game based on
Hmm.
the 1950s tarantula movie,
Oh, okay.
complete
Them,
complete
maybe?
with the no, it's called Tarantula.
Oh, okay.
It took place right in the movie universe.
Hmm.
But he played off the aesthetic. I mean, he had a black and white
Hmm.
sound, as far as the graphics. And what I mean by sound, you know how they like to use that theorem instrument to give the eerie sound,
Sure.
from the 50s movies. He did all that. And somewhere along the line, it got quashed. You can see it on YouTube, you understand?
Hmm.
But again, that's where when they talk about America great and all that other stuff, I'm not even going to go into that. But one of it is our creativity. One
Hmm.
of it is our passion, you know, because I mean, as long as they adhere and honor the concept of the universe or the character, there's not too much somebody should be able to say.
No. So
And that's the
we
best way to put it.
we at Old Man Blerd are pro mod.
At
Pro
least
pro mod. Pro doing all
film
kinds
film.
of fun stuff. So was that it for your nerd month last month or so?
Yeah, that pretty much was it.
Okay. I
Oh,
got
and I got my son a down payment on the Switch too.
Oh, nice. Ooh. Yeah, I think I'm gonna wait on the Switch too. I know that they're probably gonna put the new Pokemon game on there, which is gonna be back to Mega Evolutions, which will be fun.
Right.
Um, but let's see. In the last month, I did last weekend went to the Bricks and Minifigs Lego convention that was at the stock show, sort of one of the stock show complexes, and it was great. It was plenty of people, plenty of things there that were fun and a really cool community. Let's see. Saw Thunderbolts this last weekend. Went to Free Comic Book Day, which was also, this weekend, first Saturday of May.
Right.
And let's see what else. Bought some Spider-Man cards. There's like a new Spider-Man sort of set, I guess.
Okay.
Ooh, I thought I had heard something. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb anyone.
Oh no, that I'm in my car, so people are walking by.
Oh, I see. I was like, hello, people. Let's see, what other nerd stuff still playing? I went back to Baldur's Gate and I tried the new thing for me, which was Harry Potter. I
How's that?
there's so people are like, "What?" Let me explain myself, ladies and gentlemen. So with Harry Potter, I remember when it came out, my daughter was still too young, my other children were too old. And so I just sort of missed the window. Plus, it was really popular, which kind of I'm always skeptical about things that are tremendously popular. And it looks very similar to Neil Gaiman's Books of Magic character, which I loved. I loved that Books of Magic. We can't speak on Neil Gaiman at the moment. He is persona non grata. But Books of Magic
His
and
words are more important than his behavior, Fred.
yes, and we probably that should be the subject that we discuss probably today at length, which is can separating art from the artist. But I that it was popular. I missed the age cutoff because I was already old. My children, my youngest child was too young. And, it reminded me of the Neil Gaiman thing. And also I think there was enough that I'd seen where it sort of plugged into that kind of Oliver Twist British notion of the abused, bullied child that's, actually great kind of trope, which is fine. I mean, but with all the other stuff come in it, I just never investigated it. And I kind of also secretly deep down knew, oh, I'm gonna totally be into it. once I once I actually read it, it's just gonna be another friggin' thing that I collect and obsess over and buy Funkos for t-shirts or whatever else. So yeah, that's yeah. Did I say t-shirts twice? Probably so.
Yes, you did, but that's okay.
But let's
It's
say
okay. It's not
t-shirts
the worst
one
thing.
more time because I buy a lot of t-shirts. So yeah, so I just knew I this is going to be something I'm going to probably like, and it's going to fly in the face of my anti-popular thing, sort of deep down punk ethos. But yeah, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. Um,
Good.
enjoying it in spite of J.K. Rowling. She has her opinions on the trans thing. Um, Neil Gaiman has done some crazy things sexually, but
Well,
I
see, that's the,
still enjoy their creations, And what's crazy about the J.K. Rowling thing is that every page of that it talks about, people being oppressed for appearances, oppressed
of being who
for
they are.
being who they are or who their family is, or it's a very anti-classist. It's very American in a way, in the sense of, the caste system's BS, and just because your family's powerful or rich or established and ancient doesn't mean you're cool, and you know all of those things. And I'm almost finished with the first book. I'll probably finish the first three this month in May.
Mhm.
But yeah, and I did see the movie back in the day, but it's very interesting to but I don't want to get too into that detail because that's more of the deeper subject that we should discuss later. But yeah, so it's been quite the nerd month for me. There's been Legos. Oh, I really want to get that D&D Lego set, but that's like $300. And I also
Well,
need to.
that's one of the subjects I want to talk about. Not necessarily just this conversation, but nonetheless, is that corporate America. As I say, there's geeks or bleaks or blurs or whatever,
Mhm.
and then there's the geek walker. They're, like the day walker. The geek walker is, that relative or friend. They're not quite a geek, but they have enough respect for you to learn a little bit and
Sure,
enjoy it. You know what I mean? And then you
sure.
have the dull. The dull, they hate geekdom. It's not real. It's not
You would
important.
you would
Not,
call I suppose you would call them muggles.
yeah, the dull, because they're just dull, like a dull edge of a blade.
Sure.
They have no interest in learning. And the sad part is, a lot of dull really aren't dull. I mean, like I could say my father's one of the dull, but then he surprised me and got into Avatar deep.
Sure.
And
Well,
I'm
I
talking
think
about, the one with the ocean, not Avatar.
sure. Well, I think that, usually there's just something that needs an end. Like one of the reasons why I have so many things that I like is because I figured out everything, whether it be music or art or literature or movies or comics or what have you, whatever field of human endeavor, there's usually a key that if you find that key, you can really unlock why it's special, why it's awesome, why it's a representation of some of the best of humanity. And so, you know,
I
everybody's
understand
got
what you're
a
saying.
lot of people don't know what their key what the key is to finding stuff. And they also get into the tribalism of the thing and they think, oh, people who I mean like me, I was like, a bunch of popular people, a bunch of you know, like this Harry Potter stuff. I'm not. I like the real stuff, being
You're not going to sell
snobby.
out to the man.
Yeah, I'm not going to sell out to the Harry Potter man. And it was ridiculous because it's everything that I've ever liked. I mean, I've liked Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of stuff since I was 10, or 11 or whatever it was when I first started with that stuff. So of course, I mean, and it really, if I had encountered it at 10 or 11, I would have been full on, super into it, I'm sure. But just a little late, so I'm like, okay. And people at work were like, no, it's really good. You should check it out. I was like, okay, fine. And yeah, I've enjoyed it. But you were saying the bored or the dull, you were saying.
Yeah, the dull. I mean, because they all need a little title. We all need a title. But
Sure,
the dull are the people who they they want it just for the money. They don't understand. I mean, a good example is kaiju. Kaiju is a very good example.
hmm
The creator of kaiju, he just want to emphasize how a being could be so big that they can't help themselves. Like step on something or kill or whatever. They're not
sure.
trying to do it. I look at kaiju as just something bigger than because we'll sit up there and we will wipe out a marshland for a Walmart.
Sure.
So I look at kaiju as a way of humbling us.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a way of what's bigger than humanity. I mean, and the missiles and the planes getting knocked out of the air. It's like, when the early King Kong, he's knocking out the biplanes, off the old Empire State Building, or whatever it was.
Exactly. And that's I mean it's the same thing like we've discussed before. Superhero movies is basically we see it all the time. Matter of fact, they had a story that was I hate to say it, I can identify with if you saw it. A guy went to jail recently. This is really his son was killed by the police, we could say Wednesday.
hmm
And he killed a police officer Thursday.
Wow.
I mean, that was it. His son was killed by the police. He's like, and he literally ran a police officer over. He didn't no.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the problem is, this is again where we want superheroes. Superheroes would balance the system. I mean, that was the
Sure.
whole purpose of superheroes, to balance the system, because we have now justification when it comes from the police and mitigating circumstances when it comes from the public.
Sure.
In both cases, someone is wrong and someone is dead or harmed.
So there's a writing of the system, a market correction, so to speak. And
Exactly.
that's what the kaiju represent. That's what
No, that's what
superheroes
superheroes.
represent.
That's what superheroes represent. And animals, they represent our need of connection in humanity.
hmm
Like Flipper, Lassie, Benji, all of those movies was
hmm
just connection to, hey, you can love something because sometimes, let's be honest, loving among ourselves is a little hard. There would be no
Sure.
divorce there. There would be no problem, relationships and all that. I mean,
Well,
that's what geekdom does is another form of connection.
I also, if you look at Watchmen, spoilers for those who haven't read Watchmen or watched it, Ozymandias, when he comes up with this alien invasion, he comes up with that because he wants to unify humanity. Like
Exactly.
the thing that kaiju do is they get humanity to group together to go, hey, let's get over all of our petty differences and do this thing. And what I find interesting, I kind of think that's probably the only way we get there. Like if we were to have, if another outbreak, another disease happens, we're just gonna go to the country that had that disease come out and just blame them and continue to be divided. But if you had an alien just appear out of nowhere and you're like, oh, this is an existential threat, not for America, but for the world, maybe the world would come up with an idea of something to do about it to fix it. And that might be the only thing that gets us to unify. But that's a whole nother thing too. But
Well, see, that's one of the problems we have and that's one of the things we have in comic books is that, whatever side of fence, because I'm an independent, whatever side of fence you are, they once said, and they used Mitch McConnell's example that, what if we came up with a cure, a true cure for cancer? And his first response would be, was it liberal or conservative who came up with it? And that would determine whether he released it or not.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous because we used to say, I mean, it's like the homeless. Let's say there's 100,000 homeless.
Hmm.
The question is, how many are homeless are there because of drugs? And let's be honest, we are drug addicts. Except it's called geekdom.
Sure.
And all you have to do is find an addiction for some of these people,
A
and they will
different one.
find a way. Yeah,
A
that's right.
different
They'll
one,
find a different
perhaps.
way. You know, I mean, it's sad that we don't unify as in not um not make excuses because we're here for 75 years, give or take. And 30 years we're gonna waste just being. Even go to college, it's still
Sure.
30 years you're gonna waste. And if you are neurodiverse, you're gonna waste another 10 to 15. That's just because the way society designed. It has nothing to do with you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Just
unless you
the
want
spinning
to,
your wheels, basically, is what you're saying, is that the society makes you waste your time.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Versus, unless you're a savant, you know what I mean, or one of those influencers who know at 9, I want to be an influencer.
Sure.
Um,
Right.
and our whole society is geared towards that.
Hmm.
Wasting. I mean, like we have court cases, going on for years, like we were saying about Elder Scrolls. We know there was a time that somebody would say, you know what, we're hiring you.
Hmm.
You did such a damn good job. We're going to pay you and we're going to hire you. Now they're going to take them to court. That is BS.
Sure. So
That's just waste of creativity.
it is. So now I think I'd like to steer this
Get into the subject.
conversation. Well, no, steer this conversation, keep the same points that we're talking about, but steer this conversation into You Saw Sinners. Now, for those of you listening, Sinners is Ryan Coogler, same person who did the Black
Black
Panther
Panther.
movie. Yeah, but did all the Black Panther movies. And it is a vampire film. It takes place in the Jim Crow South. And what is this? Michael B. Jordan
Yes.
plays two brothers.
Twins.
Uh, uh, huh?
He plays twins.
Yeah,
Twins.
twin brothers, Smoke and Stack, and they want to open up a blues bar, and the vampires come a coming. They there's some musical elements. I think there's a musical number in it, and it's gotten overwhelmingly positive views. No one's screaming that it's woke or anything else, and yeah, it's just seems to be the first horror hit of the season at this point.
It is. Well, it's
Um,
like my sister now. She hasn't seen it, but she's read up on it. And what I'm saying is she's more, what I say, woke or militant or whatever. She
mhm.
was like, so what you're saying is that in the movie the Irish identified with us until they realized they were white. Like
Huh.
that's not quite what the movie is about.
No,
But
I
these are
mean,
the mindset
but
that we have people when it goes to movies.
sure, but there is some heavy symbolism in it. I mean, you get most of this from the commercial. You don't, this isn't spoiler territory, is that there are some vampires that are white vampires, happen to be Irish, and it's a battle of, good and evil, so to speak. And I like it because frankly, um I don't need, I mean, I love Dracula. But I don't need to see another Dracula film. I don't need to see another gothic horror film, although I do need to see the new Nosferatu because I hear it's good. I do like vampire films. I mean, I loved Fright Night and 30 Days
Well,
of
that was one of the
Night.
things they were saying that was in his favor is that it was a period piece, both that and Nosferatu.
Yeah,
They
it's
said that
like,
seems to be the hardest thing with the classic monsters is the time.
well, and I think that what is ridiculous, it's kind of like what I think they're doing with the animated series that's going to be Predator shorts. It's like they show the Predator in feudal Japan, they show the Predator in, I think ancient Norway and all these different places like they did with Prey, where it was with Native Americans. They're I mean, that's a way to tell a new story. I mean, what would predators be like in feudal Japan? How would they deal with predators turning invisible and hunting them? Um, and that's good. I mean, yeah, not every vampire film needs to be in, gothic Victorian London. You know, you or I mean, I think some of the really more interesting vampire films have been films that have been that like, no, let's put this in a different place. Let's put it in Santa Carla. Because one thing I could never stomach about Santa Carla is all the damn vampires. Lost Boys. And, that's a different place. Fright Night was a different place. 30 Days of Night, a different place. You don't, a different time. You don't need to have it always be sort of, you know, Victorian London. And so why wouldn't there be vampires in Jim Crow South? If you have vampires and if vampires have been around, you really can tell a story of vampires in every time period, in every nationality, and every ethnicity, and every, sort of place. So do it, because otherwise it's just you're going to lose the creative thrust that vampires how vampires can be told those stories. But
Well, the
good.
problem I've noticed sometimes is, like you were saying about vampires, is that we have a lot. As you know, when we were kids, there was drought. There was no fantasy.
Mhm.
There was no supernatural. I'm talking about TV shows, movies,
Oh
whatever.
yeah. Well,
We had a limited amount. I mean, we have a limited amount, not like today.
no,
And
you have
where
a
I'm
lot
going
now.
with it, yeah, you have a lot now. I mean, so much I have to go clip and look and see what it is, and I forget because I really don't see it, or whatever. But my point is, we have a lot of good stories, but one of the problems I was going back to the IPs
Hmm.
is that they don't finish the story. I'm not saying everything's got to have a death.
Hmm.
I'm not saying everything has to have major character shift,
Sure.
but you can. And I mean, it's like when you go home from work, you have ended your day. You understand? It's the end of the story of the day.
Hmm.
And sometimes they need to do that with these IPs, and like they did, and that's where I'm going with Sinners. They ended the story.
Hmm.
There doesn't need to be a sequel.
It was complete. It had a
It was
beginning, middle,
complete.
and end. That's good.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
well, and that sort of dovetails. You'd give it on a grade scale, A through F. What would you give it?
We'll give it a A.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, like I said, 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that's the fan thing. I don't even think I think the critic thing is high too. They're both in the 80s or 90s for both of them, and that's pretty rare for Rotten Tomatoes. Particularly with a black cast. I think people are starting to wake up, and we talked about this in one of our earlier episodes about black people like horror movies too. That's how you can get a leprechaun in the hood. So I mean, and having something like that is great because it's like, black people, I mean, those kinds of movies my mother would go see. She might not see like Nosferatu, but she would see Sinners. Do you know what I mean?
I understand exactly because it is
She's
basically
a
the
baby boomer. She would see that.
well, I'm saying is what they would call cultural bias or cultural racism.
Sure.
Because it's like, and this is totally offensive, but I don't mean it to be. But it is known that, like, for instance, a lot of Mexicans will go to a Spanish restaurant quicker than they'll go to an Irish or Italian restaurant, versus a lot of mainstream will go almost everywhere.
Sure.
And it's the same thing with movies.
Sure.
And I mean, instead of seeing, and that's the one part that's sad about America is we get to that point because the beauty of America is we went to the point of okay, just white Wonder Bread America
Sure.
to sci-fi and horror. Yes, it still was white, but the stories were starting to bend it. In other words, mainstream they couldn't do it.
Hmm.
You couldn't do it with
You couldn't do it with regular old dramas unless you were doing Raisin in the Sun or Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. But you
exactly,
you could definitely throw Yaphet Kotto in Alien. You could definitely,
exactly.
you know what I mean? You could definitely do that. You could throw a black person in Friday the 13th or whatever. But
Yeah, or
or
live and let
or
die. Even I mean, the James Bond Live or Let Die, just playing off of the voodoo
sure.
voodoo of
Yeah,
Africa,
you could do
Dominican.
Serpent of the Rainbow, you could do Angel Heart. It's because those films are already revolutionary. They don't have anything to lose by throwing some people in that other people might be like, and I think that's one of the strengths of horror is that horror. I think one of the reasons why horror was something that worked in the Black community was because there was some representation, and also it wasn't necessarily showing you know everybody in like, oh, the white hero saves the day, because that's not how horror works. And
No, and
the
and the
first.
problem with that,
Mhm.
the problem with the white hero mindset is it has a place. I don't mean in the trash, and I don't mean in
Sure,
the forefront. It just depends because, like Indiana Jones was what we would want an American to be like,
sure,
other than him having to put everything in the museum
sure,
because of the time period he came along. That makes sense.
sure,
You understand? Now he wouldn't do that. Now he would try to put a museum there in
sure.
Calcutta or something. But in the time period, it makes sense. But again, some people they'll go to white savior, like they were talking about the Godzilla movie that came out years ago with
Hmm.
Bryan Cranston. Is the white hero.
Hmm.
No, it was more of the white American. If you want to make it white, the white American of needing to control and know what's going on.
Sure. Well,
That
and
was his character. And that wasn't him trying to control it. It was like, what the hell? And scared to death.
sure. Well, and so when it comes to things, oh, and here's another thing. Oh, so you saw Sinners, I saw Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts was good. It doesn't stray too far from uh the ragtag bunch of people who come together and have to beat a thing. I mean, the first Avengers movie was that. It's like they didn't have anything in common really, so it kind of follows that trope in a lot of ways. But there was, it was a multiracial cast, multi-gender cast. Um, and it was fine. It was the Marvel movies fall into two categories: the ones that really stink and the ones that are pretty good. And uh, there really isn't any, there's no middle ground.
Middle, no
No.
middle.
It's like Iron Man 1, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Endgame, and Infinity War. That's all good stuff. Civil War was good stuff, Civil War and Winter Soldier. And then you have, like, on the other side, Thor, the Dark Age, Iron Man, anything other than one. And arguably the second Avengers wasn't really that great. Um, you know, so Captain America 1 was fine, and Thor 1 was fine, but
Well,
they
Captain America 2 was done to be more like, and they fulfilled it. They basically did a superhero Falcon and the Iceman, or Three Days
Falcon.
of the Condor.
Sure. Yeah, they did the Born Captain America.
Right. Right.
So, and it was great. Civil War was great, I thought. I thought Civil War was one of the better ones that they've done. This is definitely on the good side. It's not going to surprise you in any way, probably. I mean, if you're surprised by comic book movies at this point, I or surprised by comic books, you're reading different comic books. You're not superhero comic books. Guess what? They almost always win. Some people die occasionally. Usually they come back, but I mean, most of the time they win. It's just a matter of how they win. But same with Mission Impossible. It's like he's going to win. It's just how. Um, that kind of binary good versus evil thing, that's just how that goes. But it was a fun ride, and there's some good jokes, and there were some touching parts. And it does do what I think all of the best superhero movies do, which is tap into the selflessness of heroes. Like, you don't get much more selfless an act in superhero movies than Spider-Man unmasked trying to stop that subway train, you know?
Oh no, no, you're
And,
right. Because I mean
and they're like, he's just a kid, and and they keep it all quiet, but he sacrificed himself there. And that is typically the stuff that hits me right between the eyes, because when that selfless act happens, It's like, yes, that's what superheroes are about. Yes, it's funny costumes and funny powers and quippy jokes and all of that. Uh, but it's about the self-sacrifice that they represent, which is what they're really pointing to if they're good.
Well, yeah,
Sometimes,
that was my point of but my I have three favorite superhero teams,
hmm
but two primary are challengers are unknown because challengers unknown is what we could be in our society for real. Okay, no powers, just the will to go. Hey, we're going to get this solved.
hmm
But my point we're going with what you were saying is Doom Patrol.
hmm
Doom Patrol, if you know, came out about the same time as X-Men. But do you know why it ended?
No, why did it end?
It ended with a story that their major villain said, I'm going to destroy this small village of 200 people, kill everybody in it, unless you let me kill you.
Wow.
And they're like, what? And he said it one more time. And he said, if any of you try to fight me, I will still kill everybody and every one of their descendants. So they
Wow.
sacrificed themselves.
That's
That's
wild.
how it ended.
Hold on one second. I just got to do a quick thing. Hold on one sec. And I'm back. So did they get killed?
Yes,
Wow. How'd they bring
only
him?
only one survived. Two survived actually because one wasn't there.
Uh-huh.
And the other survived was Robot Man because his brain was inside a robot casing.
Sure.
But everybody else died.
Wow. How'd they bring him back? Because they did get brought back.
They got brought back, but it was Robot Man in a new body, and the chief, who was basically their Xavier, he was the one that wasn't there.
Yeah, because the Grant Morrison run did still have Negative Man. Did not
Well,
have
that they
Elastigirl.
no, she's one that truly died, and it was a Negative Man too, as in like another accident that created
Okay.
another.
Okay. And then the rest were all new people, I think.
That's right.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, so for me, Doom Patrol, uh, is the one, just like there's stuff that is kind of more DC in Marvel, and there's stuff in Marvel and DC that's, a little bit more, yeah, they just basically swap. It's like there's things in DC that there's characters and groups that are more like Marvel characters, and the same goes for Marvel, is what I was trying to say. And Doom Patrol always struck me as a little closer to a Marvel type team than a DC type team. I don't know why. Partially, I think it's because a lot of Marvel heads really liked Doom Patrol, and really liked Teen Titans, and it seemed as though those were a little closer to in temperament some of the things that Marvel was doing. And
Well,
as I'm not quite
well,
sure completely why, but
well. It's also what people got to understand is that certain characters represent certain time expressions,
sure,
and that's the best way to put it. And the problem is we have one thing I hate about geekdom is we have haters that hate unnecessarily.
sure,
If that makes any sense.
sure, sure,
And I mean, it's like when they did crypto in the new Superman, you have all these haters. Why not go say because it's stupid dog, blah blah blah. And you like, dude, number one, it's just a movie.
sure.
It
Well,
doesn't
I
even work on your anger, and then it just goes on where you kind of justify. And that's one of the problems in geekdom, and that's one of the problems I hate to say it in our country, is that people they have opinion, but they don't have responsibility with their opinion.
sure. Well, at a certain point, it's just entertainment. So, I mean, people having these knockdown, drag out fights over whether or not something is doing the entertainment right is sort of ridiculous. It's like if we could care that strongly about, like, I don't know, the environment, climate change, homelessness,
Hunger.
hunger, child abuse, rental property prices, housing. I mean, stuff like that. If we could care about that stuff, but no, it's like, I don't like this live action Snow White. Uh, but I
That's another
think,
good example of what I mean of that, because it's like, okay, you got to understand. I mean, especially as geeks,
uh-huh,
okay, Israel and Palestine, the closest real equivalent of Israel and Palestine in geekdom is dwarves versus elves and having a war.
sure,
It's beyond human. They've been taking this sucker on for so long. They're talking about something that happened to their great grandfather
sure.
4,000 years ago, and you're looking at them going, "Are you serious?
That reminds
Are
me
you
that's
really serious?"
that's another geek thing that I've been doing is watching Delicious in a Dungeon, which is great. It's not as
Mm-hmm.
good. It's not as good as Free Run, in my opinion, which is another fantasy anime, but it was good. Yeah, I think that there's the elves and the dwarves. I think who are you on? If you were to decide who's on this, what side would you be on, the elves or the dwarves? Because I feel like I'm more on the side of the dwarves.
Same here.
I feel like the A. I think I've said it here. I'll say it here first. I think elves are kind of pricks. And
Well, in Elder Scrolls, let me be very honest. The Thalmor are high elves,
Mhm.
and the funny thing is there are two racist groups in the whole game, and they're both elves.
Yeah.
The dark elves, the Grimmer, they'll talk about, like the Red Guard are basically blacks or dark skinned. I hate to say this, dark skinned whites, as in
Hmm.
super tan, but they're still white.
Sure.
You know, that's the Red Guard.
Yeah.
And where I'm going with it, they'll sit up there and talk about them like dogs. They'll talk about the Khajiit, which are cat people. It's like, yeah, you need a litter box. They will literally say that. You know.
Sure. Well, and that's the thing is that, like I said, I mean, I like Driz Do'Urden. I like him as an elf, but he's a drow.
Hmm.
Um, but really, the drow are just like elves. They're just evil versions of their elitism. I feel like the elves are kind of elitists, whereas I feel like dwarves, they're a little bit down to earth. They might be a little on the greedy side, but they seem to be closer in temperament to humans than elves are. But so that okay, so what we have learned is we are here at Old Man Blerd, we're pro mod, anti elf.
Well, that depends upon it, because the only time I'm neutral, or actually more elf, is in the game Dragon Age.
Yeah, I mean, there's good. I mean, don't get me
Have
wrong.
you have you ever played the game Dragon Age?
Yes, I have. I'm playing Dragon Age. Let me see, which one am I playing?
Did you play the first one, Dragon Age Origins?
No, I'm playing. Oh no, I'm thinking Dragon Quest. No, I have not played Dragon Age.
Okay, Dragon Age Origins was from BioWare. It was basically their version of D&D, blah blah blah.
Sure.
And what was interesting about it is they were one of the first ones. I mean, this harkens back to an NES game years ago,
Mm-hmm.
where the standard D&D game, you had like 7, 8 classes. They
Mm-hmm.
just broke it down to basically thief, spellcaster, and warrior. Okay,
Sure.
and basically that's what they've done now. The spellcaster can heal. The spellcaster can also be the monk.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the thief, he's the ranger. He's the bard. He's the assassin.
Mm-hmm.
The warrior could be this and this. But anyway, to the point, the elves, there are two kinds. They're the wild elves, which that's the way they are. That's their nature. They belong in the wild. And then there are the city elves, and the city elves are basically treated like black slaves.
Sure.
And what's interesting is that the first game you play with a city elf, he violates this female city elf. This
Oh.
human does.
Oh.
And he doesn't, you don't see it, but he talks about like it's no big deal. It's just an elf.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, what? That's just like they said about us. Oh, no, I go kill him.
Right. So yeah, so the elves, yeah, they're not, yeah. I just think that they're a bit snooty. They're a bit elitist, right? I mean, they're good in Lord of the Rings, but they were snooty there too.
Well,
True.
the idea of elves, and I mean, all seriousness, is supposed to be Like jellyfish. Jellyfish can live 10,000 years
Mm-hmm.
versus a human. I mean, basically, it's like the to elves, it's like us comparing ours to the 24-hour tsetse fly.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll be your friend because it's only 24 hours of your life. By the time they're done, they're dead, and you go on to the next thing.
Well, and I think that's what makes the anime Frieren so good is that she's an elf with this really long life, and she's lost all these human companions, and she's kind of like, oh wait, understanding the special nature of mortality.
Mm.
And that, if you have only, 75 years, like you were saying, or so of life, who you spend 10, 20, 30 years with is a real important thing. And, it may not be as impactful. That's I think one of the great elf stories, frankly, is Frieren. But yeah, there's an impact on that you have with this finite life that you can use. Um, but yeah, so okay, we're we've got two things down. We've
Now the next
pro
thing
mod,
is that we're
pro
going to talk
mod,
about,
anti-elf.
and the next thing is now we got to talk about separating creator from the IP.
Yes. The art from
And this,
the art from the artist. And this, I think we can get into this from multiple fronts because I think
well, let's start with
that
you, the one that's going to piss you off. Let's start with pissing you off.
okay, which one is that?
John Wayne.
Okay, so yeah. So, well, if I had to play a card, I would say, well, that's not Westerns aren't geeky. I mean, sure, everything can be geeky, but
Well, what I'm saying is that there are times in where I'm going for we as geeks, because there it is geeky. Geeky is the passion for something that's not real or something that has become out of date.
sure.
I mean, think about the
So I mean,
reenactors.
yeah,
Think
you
about the
could
people
there's
who.
definitely there is definitely a geekiness to the Western, and I'm trying to write a Western right now, so as a screenplay, but yes,
So
there
so my point with this is that we as a community, we have the dual edge of with our hue. Sometimes, I mean, Roots is the best example. I'm not talking about the one they did a couple years ago. I'm not talking about the one they did that was 4 hours. Not the one they did was 2 hours. I'm talking about the Roots that we saw as kids.
the one
There
Alex
was like
Haley's the limited series that was, I don't know, 10,
8 days,
20 how many ever
8 days.
episodes? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was 8 days. But my point is that was every black person that could try to be a part.
Sure.
Okay. Because not only the history, but because of the limited representation, but also because they just wanted to be a part. They felt history was being made.
Sure.
Where I'm going, because the closest I can now would be the Black Panther. Where I'm going with it is sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and support the actor or actress, because cancel culture, you don't have to like the person.
Yeah,
That's one of the things.
but- and that's really tough. But yeah, go on. You were saying you don't have to like the person, but the creation. We've
You
talked
don't have to
about
like what is it? Good Omen, right? Good Omen.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Sure,
Good Omen.
Good
There are
Omens.
what two
That's
200 300 people, two
uh,
or 300 people who are on this project, and because the creator did something or may have not. Only
mhm,
reason I say this because the numbers. We're not talking like Weinstein with 30 something or Diddy with hundreds.
mhm,
We're talking about a couple people. So it may have been misinterpreted. It may have been actual. We're not, that's fine. We're not saying they're not telling the truth.
mhm.
But to cost 300 people a job because of something he did, and we don't even know if he did it last week or did it years ago.
Well, and I think
Because that was Kevin Spacey is a good example of that. What I mean, Kevin Spacey has now admitted that he
sure,
did things years ago. But also, we look at it, it's like when we were kids. When we were kids, a girl got drunk. There were those who took advantage, and there are those who didn't, like me. You understand?
sure. I had to pull a number of
Sir
female
Galahad.
friends, women friends that out of frat houses during college to
I said
prevent
Sir
something
Galahad. You
from
had to be Sir Galahad. Yeah, in my case, I held her hand the whole night or whatever.
yeah,
So they
yeah,
thought that she was with me. They didn't bother her was she was with me. She's just out. That's all I did is hold her hand. But
yeah,
you get my point.
sure.
Is that the time period, Kevin Spacey, especially, and we have to look at it from that time period, 90s, gay was not welcome.
Sure,
It was still under the blanket.
sure.
So I'm not saying what he did was right. Didn't say
Mhm.
that. But I said, what was his choices?
Well, I think with Neil Gaiman, um, and I think that it opens up a bunch of different complex situations, really, because with Neil Gaiman, he did some stuff that could be construed as rape, certainly sexual assault, certainly inappropriate and non-consensual touch. Uh, and I can hold that and think of him as a creep, and that if that all is true, that those are terrible things, and he should face the repercussions of that. And Sandman is just about one of the best comic book series you are likely to ever read. And
Yes,
I come from a place of having read thousands of comic books at this point, for sure.
yes,
Certainly dozens of artists and writers, and you just don't get a better start to finish because it's a complete story. People might think he's done some stuff after the fact, but nah, just the complete story of one through, I guess, 75 issues of Sandman. Perfect story, perfectly executed, tied up all the loose ends, was great. The He has some other things, I think conceptually, Good Omens with Terry Pratchett, and American Gods, which, great conceptually. Some parts of it are great, some parts of it are like whatever. But he's talented. And he finished up Miracle Man, which was started by Alan Moore, and that's a great series. I mean, you don't without Miracle Man, you kind of don't get Watchmen, and you don't get The Boys, you don't get any of these sort of superhero deconstructionist stories, because I think it even predates The Dark Knight Returns, if I'm not 100% positive, but I'm pretty sure it's before that. And he's part of that. And so it's really troubling, and I feel like it's a little easier for me to keep reading Sandman than it is for me to watch Woody Allen films, even though I was a fan of Woody Allen, all those movies since I was, a teenager, early teenager. I was just into Woody Allen movies. I watched all of them. I thought they were hilarious. They combined sort of the sacred with the profane when it came to humor. They talked about philosophical subjects, but they could also just delve into slapstick. It was just brilliant. It was like top to bottom. I thought all those were great. And he is very likely someone who
it's a horrible thing.
sexually molested his foster child, or actually maybe his birth child. I'm not sure if it was. I think it might have been his
Foster
birth
child.
child.
She was his foster child. She was his
A
foster child.
foster, okay, foster, but I'd have to look that up because yeah, and that's terrible. And then he ended up marrying one of his foster children. So I mean,
Well,
clearly
that's the one
he
I was talking about. I don't know about the other one. That's the one
no,
I was
the
talking about
other
was that
one,
one he
that's
married.
who, no, that's who I was talking about, is the other one, which I believe might have been his child. And so, and Ronan Farrow, his son, who looks, in my personal opinion, a lot like Frank Sinatra, who was
Like
dating
Frank,
Mia,
Frank, Frank, Frank. He does look like Frank.
who was
He does.
dating Mia Farrow before Woody Allen. Anyway, um, says yes, he did do that, and it's like that was heartbreaking because for me, I love those films. I mean, I thought they were great. And so, how do we separate the art from the artist? I mean, it's one thing when it's like a musician, it's like, and you have someone like Prince, and it's like, oh, he died of fentanyl abuse, basically. Here's this person who was bananas talented, and he ended up dying of drugs. It's a tragedy, you know. Those things seem to be easier to reconcile because it's like, that's self-inflicted wound. But there's a Prince documentary that's coming out where he is alleged to have beat up a girlfriend. They're never going to release that documentary because the estate won't allow him to. But one of his girlfriends, I believe Jill something or another, said, yeah, she loved him. He was great and he was talented. And one day he lost his shit and they physically assaulted her. That's what it's alleged to have done. I'm saying alleged because I don't want anyone yanking our podcast off. But, does that
Well, I
change
mean, see, that's
does that change your view of what I find is just about a perfect record of Purple Rain? I mean, Purple Rain as a record, start to finish, is genius. Same with 1999, arguably same with Sign of the Times. But he did this thing, and Jimi Hendrix is alleged to have done the same thing too. David Bowie was alleged to have slept with underage women, just like uh, Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin's, I mean, that's a phenomenal group in my opinion. And he took a 13, 14-year-old girl traveling with them for on tour for a
well,
long
we don't have to
time.
go there. We don't have to go there because we don't know. That's what I'm saying by that. But we do know about Elvis and Priscilla. That's what I mean.
Sure. Well,
I mean,
and
on
Jerry Lee
record, she
Lewis
was
and his
13.
cousin. Yeah, and Jerry Lee Lewis and his cousin. Uh,
Exactly.
but
We
all of
know both
them,
of them on record, is what I'm saying. We know both of those on record
well, and
without
we know,
question, without doubt.
well, we know a ton of groupie situations where they were underage. So, Aaliyah, poor thing, rest her soul. I mean, her whole thing with R. Kelly was hella problematic. And so I guess the tough thing is that for us to be able to separate the art from the artist, maybe it's because, and I think having done artistic things in my life, I feel like sometimes art comes from a completely different place. I mean, it's almost like an antenna and it just sort of beams into you and you're like, "Oh, here's a cool idea." And you do the idea. And that has nothing to do with how nice you are to your wife or your children or friends or any
Well,
number of
I
things.
think we just said it earlier when we were talking about, women being taken advantage of when they were drunk,
Hmm.
is that these people, especially with their money and their power, they have a greater opportunity to a choice
Hmm.
without having to do the negative that they have done.
Sure.
And the other part is it gets off it just a hair bit, but bear with me. They have a movie called Flesh Eaters from the 60s.
Hmm.
It's a standard B movie, blah, blah, blah. But there's the German scientist in it. And the guy was a Nazi non sympathizer. In
Hmm.
other words, he was against Nazism
But he
and he
was in it.
fled the country. He was fled the country because he was in it briefly because he was an actor.
Hmm.
But you know how they had the tropes and the traveling, so he managed to get out,
Hmm.
just like the Von Trapp.
Hmm.
But anyway, to the point, you can look at it like him and Goldfinger, as in the guy who played Goldfinger. Both of them, they had no choice. Are we going
Sure.
to hold that against them?
Well, and I
And then
think
also you have to look at the time period. Like I said, the time period. Kevin Spacey. I'm not a fan or not a fan of Kevin Spacey. I mean, as much as I hate to say this, the best comparison is Chick-fil-A.
sure,
Love their chicken sandwich, but it's like you all the time you hear, well, they're against gays.
sure. You
Love
don't
their
like
chicken sandwich.
sure, and I think well, and I think that it just has to. I mean, if you're gonna do it, it's tough. Because I think there's the one thing. Like for me, I have all these Woody Allen movies on DVD, and all that stuff comes out, and it's like it's really hard to appreciate his art because he's in it. He's in the movies and he directed it. Uh, Roman Polanski, I mean, pretty certain to have also sexually assaulted a girl, excuse me, that was like 13 in a hot tub, gave her some barbiturates and did all kinds of stuff. You
Well,
would
on that
be,
one, I want to intervene on for a second. That one I want to intervene on.
hmm,
I'm not saying this right, and do not think that I'm
sure,
condoning, but his post traumatic stress disorder of his wife, Tate,
sure,
and their child being killed, who knows what that would make him do to survive that? Not
sure,
condoning, but
sure.
that's one of the times when mental
Well,
illness, someone should have intervened quickly.
and there's a couple of things that are problematic about that because it's like I don't know how that young woman ended up alone with him to begin with. That's there's
That's a
some
good
kind
question.
there's some breakdown there.
I would
Um,
say that's a good
but
question.
you know,
But
but regardless of that, uh, this is a 13-year-old, I believe, is how old she was. It's like, no, you know, um,
Well,
and
here's the thing that she said, let it go, and she's almost 60 now, if not 60 plus.
sure,
And she said, let it go. And the DA still pursues that.
sure. Well, and
And
that's
I'm not saying that they're wrong for pursuing it, but then you have other cases and they say the statute of limitation. You see, this is where the system double talks.
sure. Well, and the thing that's tough, okay, so we have Roman Polanski allegedly doing this thing. And, I would argue Rosemary's Baby is probably one of the single best examples of women being gaslit by society and the men in their lives as you're likely to ever see. And in addition to that is one of the best horror films of all time. I mean, it's in a very short list. You would have to put Rosemary's Baby uh in the top 20 of all time, I think.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and that's Roman Polanski. And it was in some respects, a very feminist movie because she is having all of this stuff happen to her and asking and trying to search out all of these people and find anybody that can help her. And everybody's gaslighting her and everybody's just taking advantage of her. And she is just and she was raped. She was raped by the devil and
Mhm.
sold it to spoilers for you that haven't seen a 50-year-old some odd movie, you're a 50, 60-year-old movie, whatever it is. Uh, that for her husband to become famous, done that so that he could get roles. I mean, just terrible. I mean, this is so you would think that somebody like Roman Polanski, having had this story and directing it, and you would think it's like, oh, this clearly he knows taking advantage of women is bad. And then you have this situation that he's in. So what I think, if I were to solve the problem of separating the art from the artist, I think that what you have to do, you don't have to do anything, I suppose, but what I think you should probably do is understand human beings are complex. And sometimes the same place that art is generated from is not what the ego expression of that person is. I mean, you know, Neil Gaiman is a classic example. He has this one story about this artist who locks up this muse, Calliope, constantly is raping her. And because of that, he is given all of these great ideas for stories, and he becomes a tremendously popular because he has locked away a muse and is raping her repeatedly to get ideas because she's generating the ideas. Sandman, spoiler, comes in and rescues her because they used to be lovers, and he punishes the guy with just constant ideas to the point where he just goes crazy. So you would think a person who has the story about raping the muse wouldn't be into raping people, right?
It would just make sense.
It would make sense. So what I'm willing to think is that this where art comes from is in some respects not entirely local. And that sounds super new agey, I know, but it's not entirely local in the sense that yes, you as a personality are the vehicle for this creativity to come to you. And yes, it does maybe relate to, in some ways, your personal history and your interests and your likes and your dislikes, but it's not really from that completely. And it's from just the creative source itself. And sometimes the people that are these creative people are harboring some real shadow, some real monstrous stuff. I mean, Kevin Spacey apparently, uh, you know, um, I guess, took advantage of men in his hotel and had been a terror, taking advantage of people repeatedly for sexual favors. And you're not likely to get a better acting portrayal of a person than what he did in The Usual Suspects. You're not likely to see much better political acting as in House of Cards. I mean, he is a talented dude. What was it? American Pie? No, American
No,
Beauty.
beauty.
American Beauty. Again, just really, really good. And um, he all had some stuff. He had some real stuff. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, I think, was another one that he did that was really good. I mean, he was a really talented person. You don't have to be a rapist or a sexual pest or a molester or uh, abusive or anything else to have creativity. But some people who have access to creativity end up having some of these problems. It's going to take me a while to watch Woody Allen movies again. I'm sure when I get there, I'll find them delightful. But
But see, the thing
it's
the
going to be
thing is,
tough.
you have to get around Woody Allen. You have to get around Woody Allen, the human, and stick
Yes.
to Woody Allen, the creator. And
Yes.
I mean, it's the same thing like you were saying about Neil. You just think of him in the first of all, you got to think about great creativity can also is on the fine edge of being greatly insane. Because if
Sure.
anyone is greatly almost insane is Grant Morrison.
Sure.
I mean,
I was
anti
saying,
anti person, anti person for
sure.
people is God, now I can't think of his name. Just thought his name, I can't think.
Alan
Guy
Moore.
Alan
Yeah,
Moore.
Alan Moore is definitely more of an introvert. Again, I thank heaven we don't have anything about Alan Moore. I think what's funny is it's kind of like the difference between like Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby. When all the stuff came out about Bill Cosby, people like Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy looked pretty good in comparison. It's like they wore their warts on their sleeve, and you don't ever hear about all kinds of crazy shit that Richard Pryor was up to, but
But
he
it was
was
mainly with
a hundred
himself.
percent. Yeah, but it was mainly to himself, and it was 100% out in the open. And yes, he was a very tragic figure, with a very tragic bringing that created this very comedic mind. I mean, a very short list of greatest comedians of all time. I mean, you don't get much further out than, Joan Rivers, George Carlin, Lenny Bruce, Richard Pryor. I mean, and Robin Williams. You just don't get much better than that handful of folks. Sam Kinison was good too, and also battling his demons. But I think the people that battle their demons publicly have less to lose when it comes to any kind of public shaming because, Bill Cosby was Mr., Jello Pudding Pops and Mr., Cosby Show, and he was raping people, allegedly raping people, giving them drugs, knocking them out, and sleeping with them. You
Well,
can't,
see,
and it was
the other
not
thing.
one, it was not two. I don't think it was less than 10. I mean, he was doing that to a lot of women. And here he is, Mr. Pull up your pants and clean, not cursing. And it's like, I didn't find him that funny anyway. So for me, it was like, that's not a loss. I have no problem separating the art from the artist because I don't like his art that much and I don't like him. So not a big loss for me. Um, so, but I think that that's really crazy when you think about some of the stuff that Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein got up to. They were doing some really terrible stuff. And Harvey Weinstein, that was an open secret in all of Hollywood. They were joking about that at the Golden Globes. Seth MacFarlane was anyway, so kind of known. But you were saying?
And see, that's part of the I was saying part of the problem is that we as a society we don't condone by action, but we condone by inaction.
Sure.
And we also, like I said, when you cancel, the problem is our society is, and this gets off the subject way, but I'm going to get back to it. The American culture is in its genetic DNA, political DNA. We do not like being told what to do.
Sure.
That's it across the board. We just hate it. That's why Trump is in office.
Sure.
We hate in a genetic
It is
political
it is
climate.
very
We
deep
hate to be
within
told
it's
what to do.
very deep within Uncle Sam, certainly. Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
and it's the same thing, and not to a degree is when it comes to me with fandom. I mean, really, there are certain, like, me, I'm the gamer of the group between you and me, and there are some games I sit there and I don't like to be told what to do, but I see what they're trying to do because they have a game. I love the game. I use it as a supplement. Right Star. The whole idea is the Nazis won. Blah blah blah. It takes place in the 24th century.
Sure.
Some people don't support it because it's so fast as you can and win. I didn't say as a game is good. As a supplement is good for another game.
Sure.
You're trying to get out of there, you get trapped in another dimension, blah, blah, blah. But then we have other games, and it's like, why did you, like you were saying about where does it come from? I mean, they have a Japanese game where you can rape your boss.
Sure.
It's like, okay, did you have a problem with your boss that day?
Sure. Well, and I
I
think
mean,
that's it. And I do think that is, I think there's various places that art comes from. I think sometimes art comes completely with all of these different connections that are in the individual that causes this burst of inspiration, and they make something new and whatever else. And then there's some that just comes from a really dark place, and there's some that comes from a really hateful place. Somebody really would have to hate women to come up with a video game where the whole goal is to rape as many women as possible. Do you know what I mean?
oh, I understand completely because it's like, and like I said, not being told to do. It was about 20 years ago. They had in Boulder, Colorado, they had in their art museum, some guy, they had a whole exhibit of penises,
hmm
phallos, penis.
Sure,
And they were stolen by this guy that was like 89. And they found out about a week later. He says, I don't give a crap what you say is not art. And see, that's the problem we have is that you have one group that's going to say it's art regardless, the banana on the wall,
sure,
the beer
sure,
can in the corner, you know?
sure.
And yeah, the other group that's going to say that the penises are art or, you
Or not
know,
art.
or the game rape porno is art. They're gonna say that's art, and it's like,
Sure. Well, and that's
um,
why art it really is a spectrum. And I do feel,
I'm saying that we shouldn't necessarily give it all the blink of art. We should give some a different name, or
well,
I mean,
we could maybe, excuse me, maybe what we'd have to do is have art be, oh, this is ego based art, or this is transcendent art, or this is
that
transpersonal
that would
art,
work perfect.
or
Like what
this
you
is
say, or
or this is art of the id, this is art of the superego, and this is art of the ego. I think that you could do that, and I think that would be helpful because I do think, when you look at something like Baldur's Gate, or you look at something like Fallout, there's absolute art there. How the individual plays it can be very egotistical or very transcendent. Uh, like I said, with Woody Allen stuff, there's some movies, Love and Death, Shadows and Fog, I think that get into some real transcendent places while also being slapsticky, or they lowbrow, highbrow, all of the things. And so maybe,
sleeper,
huh? Sleeper.
sleeper.
Yeah, Sleeper has some points that it makes too. I do think that there is some stuff where it's, you know, sometimes what's being said by the individual artist is actually pretty deep. And I mean, there's some parts to Sandman where it's like, yeah, that he was firing on a whole nother level. But I think he negated his art because I think that what he ended up doing, and I think a lot of artists do this, they get famous and then they get a big swelled head, and then they start saying, well, don't you know who I am? I'm such and such. It's like the place that, Led Zeppelin came to with doing their music is one place. What they did with groupies, completely different place. What, you know, and I so it is there is a bigger no, there's a number of facets that people have. And if you're looking at that darker shadow facet, that's some ugly stuff sometimes, but there can still be this really beautiful place. But it is hard, and I wouldn't make a decision. I don't think there should be the same decision for everybody. Everybody draws their lines. If you are doing things that have a lot of harassment, um, you know, then and that troubles you, that activates you, what people call triggers you, then yeah, you don't have to partake in that. You shouldn't force yourself to partake in that. And if I'm sure, D.W. Griffin, Birth of a Nation is widely considered an epic good movie, but the subject matter is, we got to do something about these Negroes. So,
Yeah, what
so,
you say is true, and it's one of the
so,
things that they.
hmm?
I was going to say is one of the things that they fail upon when it comes to creation. I mean, you have created, I dabble, but
Hmm.
either way, when it comes to creation, you have to sometimes step away.
Sure.
And I always give the example of Two Face. Two Face is the best example of what I'm talking about. The villain from DC, Batman's villain.
Hmm.
If Two Face was wrote the way Two Face could do, in other words, they could never do a killing joke of Two Face
Hmm.
because realistically, it would require Two Face to take over Harvey Dent.
Hmm.
And in order for that to happen, he would have to do the heinous.
Hmm.
Heinous would be molestation. Heinous would be rape. Heinous would be killing elderly before someone or something else. He would have to do all these heinous crimes to basically break the Harvey Dent line.
Hmm.
I mean, and that's the gift of being a creator. We can look into that, but some of us don't know how to look and then step away.
Hmm.
And some of us go all the way in, you know. And then some people they take out their frustrations. Like I think I mentioned Fatal before,
Hmm.
the role playing game Fatal,
Hmm.
you know, and it has, tabletop role playing games are supposed to be escape. And sometimes it's the same old, same old. I mean, it's just another version, like a strawberry lemonade versus a lemon lemonade versus blueberry, whatever. But sometimes you had a person, they try so hard to make it different and over the top is ridiculous. And that was it. They had anal circumference charts. They had penile girth charts. They had at least 20 ways to get raped in the game chart. And you wonder why it didn't succeed. It's like, well, we're trying to escape from the bad of the world.
Hmm. Sure. Well, and I think that I think having created a number of different things, whether it's just writing or poetry or stand up or all of these things, the the things that inspire you come from different places. Sometimes it comes from your own experience. Sometimes it just comes from a weird juxtaposition of words or images or a thing. Like, you're talking about Harvey Dent, and I was like, oh, they wouldn't it be interesting if you would do a Batman story called The Death of Harvey Dent, which is where something happens to his coin and he no longer can have the Harvey character ever be prominent, and he just goes down that road. And that would be a really interesting subject because it's like you gotta bring Harvey back. He's at least half a good person. you know so he's not but there's an idea. It just comes from just like, oh, wouldn't that be interesting, someone should do that. We all come through that place, and sometimes it's just like you say, inspiration could come from anywhere. But some of this stuff, I don't feel like the person the person that did Rosemary's Baby is the same person or the same side of the person. If it's a multifaceted
No,
gem.
I think is the person who did Rosemary's Baby as far as creating it, same guy who wrote Psycho.
Hmm.
I think it was Robert Bloch. I think
Oh,
that's his
okay.
blank.
Yeah, so I should say directed Rosemary's Baby. Yeah. I
Rosemary's Baby is, I think, it's the first Antichrist movie. Because it
might
opened a whole
be.
genre. Because after that you had the Omen, and you had the God, I think the one with Kirk Douglas.
Exorcist, and you had, yeah, all the Omen stuff.
Yeah, they had one with Kirk Douglas, which I thought was realistic. But anyway, and then they had in the '80s it started to break down. They got the silly over the top ones. You go, okay, what are they do?
Sure.
And where I'm going with it is that, again, that satisfies a different urge,
Sure.
because we all want to dabble in evil. And like I said to someone, we all have evil. You just have to ask, what is your evil? My evil is two. My evil is how come and why not.
Sure.
If my
And
brain ever locks into that, I can do all sorts of things that
sure.
I'm not very proud of.
Sure. Sure. Well, when we just to bring it back to J.K. Rowling a little bit, I did do the test and came up Slytherin, and I had sort of an existential panic because I was like, "Oh my God, am I hiding evil from myself?" But, people were like, "Ah, no, Slytherin's not just all bad. It's other things too." Um,
Exactly.
but I was like, "Oh man, Slytherin." Yeah, I think that we all have the potential for great harm and great, you know, uh
Well, like I
positivity,
said about
great
that father
goodness.
earlier, like I said about that father earlier who ran over the police officer because they killed his son.
Sure.
I can't say I wouldn't do that if something happened to mine. I am not even going to try to pretend it wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And I do think that, there's like the brothers that they were molested, and one of them found out
Menendez,
yeah,
Menendez.
no, this is a different one. These were brothers that were molested, and one of the brothers got all the names on a social registry and beat them with checking off people, beating them with a hammer. You know?
I remember that.
Yeah,
I
this
do.
was a
It was
this
either it
this
was
was
an
a new
A state.
a fairly new one where that's what he did. He just looked at the registry as a to-do list and and brains a bunch of people. So I mean, we do all have the capacity for great good and great evil. And, you see anybody on their best day, oh my gosh, they should win the Medal of Honor. And you see anybody on their worst day, it's like, we need to lock this motherfucker up right now and throw away the key. Because all of us have thought things or said things or done things that we would not be proud of. Now, the problem with our society currently, yes, this is a dabble in politics, is now we have people who want to do negative, evil, harmful, mean-spirited stuff and feel that they should be rewarded, and people are rewarding them. And that's a
Well,
problem.
that's
And
a key
that's the
problem.
problem.
The problem we also have is what people don't understand. If I mentioned this before, there are 8 billion people on this planet, and when
Sure.
you look at the concept from there, and this is going to sound bad, but please hear me out. There are going to be people who can't do for themselves, and their only purpose is to teach you to love and care for another.
Sure.
There are people, they can't really do anything but be sexual,
Hmm.
as in your partner, but that will inspire you to go do other things.
Well, and I
And
think
I just go from there, because I'm not saying everybody's like that, because
sure.
because there's some people that for whatever reason they are in that circle, they are in that state of life,
Hmm.
and because some people, well, I don't think that's what they should only do. You
Sure.
don't know why they're in that state.
Everybody's got a
That's
different,
not your job to get them on this state.
yeah, everybody's got a different
The
path.
job is the person who they're with.
Yeah, everybody's got a
Yeah, the
different
person
path.
who they're with is to help them get out of that state. That's their job.
Hmm.
And where I'm going is, as long as we refuse to recognize that, we're going to have problems. And the other side of the same coin is we have the entitled.
Sure.
And the problem we have politically also is conservative side. There's a set of rules, and these rules must be obeyed without thinking that rules were made for us, not us born for rules.
Sure.
The problem with the liberal side is we have blanket empathy. You
Sure.
know, person is using the system, and they know they're abusing, and they know they're getting away, and we'll say, like a squatter, we'll say, as I mentioned before, put them in a home or jail for 30 years. Where some people say, well, they have a right to place to stay. Well, if you really want that, you need to do 4 things. Number one, let's say you make 40,000 a year. Period.
Mm-hmm.
You just make 40,000 a year. The house you want is say 300,000. You paid your mortgage would come to like 21,000.
Mm-hmm.
They should be able to take that out of your check, and you find a way with everything else,
Sure.
so you can get a house if that's what you want. This
Well,
checking your credit and all the other stuff is BS.
well, and I think that it's a nuanced thing because it's like I think that we do need to have compassion for people. We do need to not necessarily have idiot compassion, like, hey, this person is an alcoholic. Here's some more beer. That's what they're asking for. Maybe that's not the best compassionate thing to do. But I also think that it's nuanced. And I think when it comes to art, I do think that, it may be difficult, but I do think we can appreciate art that comes from troubled individuals. And we,
Well, you can't say that.
because everybody, I mean, yeah, I think it's one thing if you feel like you're financially supporting this person who's doing evil stuff. I understand that as being like, no, you don't want to do that. But, you've already got the Sandman entire run. Are you going to like sell it because he's done these terrible things? Maybe. I mean, but
Well, it's like the people who sit out there and blow up their Teslas. If you want to go that route,
sure.
like
I
you
just
already
think
bought it last
I
year.
I think we have to have a much more nuanced understanding of these things and not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I do think we can do it. Now, again, it's for each person to do how they do it, and if whatever the line you draw is the line you draw, but I do think there's a way you can reconcile it, and it's worth trying to do because I think that if we were going to throw away all of the art produced by people who've done some terrible things, I think we would find museums mostly empty. I think we would find record stores mostly empty. I think we'd find bookstores mostly empty because, Pablo Picasso may never have been called an asshole, but I believe he was. So,
Yeah, Picasso was up there sleeping with women who were young enough to be his granddaughter, not great granddaughter. And
sure,
today they will
and
go fringy
sure, and
instead of looking at his work.
sure, and I can't think of a rock and roll artist that didn't do something problematic, and I love some songs, some albums. So,
So I mean,
I
like you were saying about museums, I mean it's the same thing now. The museums are being attacked because of hues and cultures and everything else,
sure,
as we were talking about sinners earlier. And I've always been about truth and knowledge, period. I don't
sure,
care where it comes from. I care about truth and knowledge. And to sit up here and attack museums and to have everything, I mean, especially in our field, geekdom, you know, don't get me wrong, representation like they had the Captain America about 2 years ago, where they had officially a gay Captain America. They had officially a black Captain America. They had officially a Native American Captain America.
sure.
And there's a point that you go, why? And I don't mean as in why do that? Why not just have this Captain America? Oh, he goes home to his husband. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Oh, they go back to the reservation. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Don't make it official. Just, oh, all right. I see where
Well,
you're going to.
and you can
You
tell
know,
different.
I mean, that's one.
I think you can tell different stories, and that's part of the problem is some of the stories that we have a hard time telling. Um, as far as J.K. Rowling, she is. It seems I've done a little bit of digging, not a lot, but a little bit of digging in terms of what her views on trans women are, and it's coming from, it sounds like, sort of a feminist place. Maybe some fear, because it seems like there's some worry about whether trans women would hurt other women. Um,
Well,
and
you
and
want to
and
know a philosophy class subject I saw years ago on an
what?
article?
Hmm.
Who's a real woman?
Well,
And hear me out. Who's a real woman? You're
mm-hmm,
born as a woman
mm-hmm,
and you get vaginal cancer. Okay,
mm-hmm,
you're born as a woman and you get urethral cancer. Still the same woman.
mm-hmm,
You're born as a woman and you have breast cancer. Okay, now we have a man who sees a woman, he's trans.
Hmm.
Okay, now he has a vagina. Now he has breasts.
Hmm.
Is he more of a woman than you?
Well, and I think that what we're getting
And I'm
to,
talking about from her point of view. I'm not talking about from mine or
sure.
you.
Well, and it raises, there are some questions that, may remain questions, because there are people, plenty of people that think that if AI gets advanced enough, it could be like the television show, or the not television show, but the movie. I think it's called Her, with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. Is that what it's
Okay.
called? Anyway, he falls in love with his AI, and it's
Oh,
voiced
that's
by
she.
she,
It's
maybe.
she.
Okay.
She
Uh,
is the one you're talking
yeah. And he falls, and is that a woman that he was in love with? And I don't have the answers. I'm just going to call you by
about. I think
whatever
the
you
answer
wish.
is to all the guys who fall in love with their car.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Christine, right? I do think that, these are questions that people are raising. And I think that there's some stuff that J.K. Rowling is being pretty intolerant about. And have enjoyed so far, Harry Potter. So, it is, and it complicates it to me, to some degree, because that book really is, so far, has been about the underdog and about the oppressed and about all of these things. And, I know I'm going to get to stuff where that people have said that this was an anti-Semitic trope. I know I'm going to get to stuff that has to do with, some other stuff. I mean, certainly orcs at a one point in time were thought to be um uh kind of a racial analogy. You know what I mean?
Oh
Uh
yeah, similar to H.P. Lovecraft and all his
sure. And
monsters,
H
and they
and
were supposed to
H
be
yeah,
people
and
of color.
H.B. Lovecraft's a classic example. I mean, he was super racist. He got better over time, but I don't think he ever got completely unracist. And he created some really transformative horror. Is considered the godfather of horror as in the written form. So, we're going to have to start feeling like getting to some place where we can appreciate some of this stuff, put it in a historical context, put it in a cultural context, put it in whatever context it needs to, and then people can judge for themselves. Because, I feel like I'm going to continue to enjoy reading the Harry Potter books, and I am a pretty firm trans ally. So, you know, I, if someone decides, that, I'm not a good enough ally because I like those books, I guess that's unfortunate. But I think that we have to decide for ourselves individually. We shouldn't decide for others, is how I would leave it. But
Well,
that's about
yeah,
as much time as we have for this podcast. But you were going to say one last thing, maybe?
I was gonna say is that's the point. Is we going back to what I said at the beginning is that it is hurtful, it is destructive to have the impassioned, hateful arguments like you liking or going to like or starting to like Harry Potter or me liking Sandman. You understand? And some people just thinking that we're all these things when we're not. We just like the work.
Sure.
I mean, it's like it harkens back to when I was a kid with D&D. My parents, I give them credit. I had no one to play it with. I had a little job, and I went and bought. They had a little hobby store, and went and bought every D&D Advanced First Edition,
Hmm.
all the way up to 3,
Do you still
because
have
that's what
those?
they had up. The Purge, my sister, remember?
Oh no, that would have been worth more money, I'm sure.
But
Oh,
anyway,
yes.
anyway, my parents, my mother, who's a strong Christian, she's not a super Christian, but a strong Christian, was wondering about the demons and everything. It's like I told her, no, I just love the dragons.
Hmm.
And that's the thing that people, if I can say that to my mother who's a Christian about D&D, why can we not accept that when it comes to fandom?
I
Why
think,
can we not, just enjoy it?
yeah, I think
Okay,
we can. I
yeah,
think,
because it'd be like Good Omens. There's no reason that the story is supposed to go 5 seasons and it was doing good for these 2 and had to work. because of him being a butt, you pay him. You do like they do with all the other things. They say, okay, you know what? We're going to pay you because we owe you, but we're going to pay you only to a point. You understand what I mean? You know, just there's so many things they can do. I'm not saying cut him out entirely, but his creative input would be gone.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think it would be nice if he had that. I mean, I think that people can have their public shaming, their moment, but I mean, I feel like, to me, I would much rather have Neil Gaiman continue to work on Good Omens than Donald Trump to be president. I think that's if we're gonna cancel people, let's cancel people that are actually in positions of power over us.
Well,
Not I
I
could
don't.
don't let I mean, we can definitely try people in court for any number of sexual harassments or assaults or racism or anything else. We do all that. But if they're not actually in power, maybe, slow your roll a little bit. I mean, if we could hold these people like Neil
Well,
Gaiman
that harkens
and
back to the concept of news versus concern. That harkens back to the
yeah,
concept of news versus concern. Where I'm going with Tiger Woods years ago when
uh-huh,
he first cheated on his wife, as far as being public knowledge.
uh-huh,
It wasn't news. It's still not news. It's concern as far as the
sure,
public. Is news to his 150 Tiger Wood
sure,
Foundation employees.
sure,
Is not new to us.
sure,
And that's what we can't differentiate. Like Trump, I'm an independent, and the reason why I say because we know we're gonna have some listeners that'll be turned off about Trump or whatever, one way or the other. But he crossed the line when he AI'd himself as the Pope.
sure. And
Okay,
he's done.
whether you like him or not, they're just lines you don't cross. And then he did, of all things, and this is where it comes with geekdom. He got himself jacked up in a vest, and I mean jacked, his arms and everything, with a
Uh-huh,
red lightsaber, saying
uh-huh,
"May the Fourth be with you"
sure.
on a meme. I'm
Uh,
like, no. You want to wear a robe like Obi-Wan? Cool, great. And then why a red? That's Sith, right?
yeah, right. All right. Yeah, I just
That,
think if we're going to hold people accountable for bad behavior, let's hold people accountable that have some effects on our lives, not just entertain us. But yeah, well, there's that. We are pro mod, slightly anti elf, and pro enjoy what you enjoy. And if you don't want to go there because the person's done something you don't like, you don't have to. You don't. No
yeah,
one's
it's gonna make everybody else miserable.
don't judge anybody for liking the thing that they like. Hopefully, they are not liking it because they're a terrible person. That's what we're doing in politics. But anyway, so
Andrew Tate.
yeah, right. So where can people find you, Terrence?
At drakestorgmail.com.
And they can find me at thatsoquantum@gmail.com or drupu108@gmail.com. Give us your thoughts. Send us some emails. Like us. Subscribe to us. Do all of the things. We'd love to have some guests. If you're interested in being a guest, send a shout out to us in the messages or whatever else. And yeah, we may not solve it here, but don't be a jerk elf. Continue to mod as much as you like, and enjoy what you enjoy. And like we like to say around here, don't be a stranger.
Just be strange.
And take care. We'll try to see you before the end of the month. Bye.
Bye.